Hey, what's up? This is Nick with Motorcycle.com, and welcome to another episode of In Gear, where we put stuff on our bodies for your viewing pleasure. Now today, I have the Arai Contour-X, which slots in just below the Corsair-X in terms of the overall lineup. So what is this helmet? Well, it's the brand's overall just general purpose sport and road oriented helmet. As you can see, it has some of the aerodynamic features that would be optionally available on the Corsair-X, and just a few other little sporty things, and as well, some pretty aggressive sporty graphics. The Contour-X and its story is really about embracing comfort. So that's what we're going to be talking about with this helmet right here. Now, one of the things that Arai really promotes is the fact that they are still an independently owned and handmade helmet company based out of Japan. Something that they take a lot of pride in, and having actually witnessed this manufacturing in person in Japan a number of years ago, it really does give credence to that whole handmade process. The shells are manufactured by people with years of training that are doing hand-laid molds. It's just a very intense manufacturing process that is honestly quite cool, and it really speaks to the quality control that comes out of a premium brand like Arai. Speaking of premium, we are going to mention the prices right now. For solid colors, you're looking at a current price of $749, and graphics start at about $889. There are some graphics with pricing above that, and just remember, those prices are relevant to the timing and publishing of this particular video. So, what is the Contour-X's story? Now, Arai shares a lot in common with all of its helmets, whether you're talking about the Regent, the Quantum, the Signet, the Corsair-X, or the Contour-X. They all rely on the R75 shape, which is the continuous 75mm radius across the entire circumference of the shell. So why do they do that? Well, Arai believes that by having a shell that is, we'll say, more rounded and honestly inspired by the common egg, the thing that you actually eat, has high protein, is super tasty. Eggshells are incredibly strong for what they are. And so Arai has borrowed from nature, and used that to inspire a lot of their shell design. Now, what Arai talks about is glancing off. And so what they believe is the best way to deal with mitigating forces is to have this rounded curvature. So as you notice with Arai's, there aren't really protruding aspects. These helmets aren't as aerodynamic as other brands, say from Shoei, HJC, AGV. They really appeal to this more rounded nature. Now, all of these features right here are removable by force because they are essentially just stuck on. But back to the glancing off property. If you look at this shell, as it strikes the earth, in an unfortunate circumstance, their belief is that it's less likely to hook up and cause further injury to the rider. That's the R75 shape and the glancing off philosophy in a nutshell. But moving on to the shell itself. Overall, it is a fiberglass shell. Arai calls it the peripherally belted complex laminate construction shell, but for our purposes, really it's a fiberglass shell. Updates with the Contour-X as we received them in 2023 when this helmet was launched. They updated some resins and did some AR mats, which is just some, fabric material that's within the actual construction of it, because there's multiple different layers of different fabrics and materials that make up that true fiberglass shell that we're talking about. But anyway, overall shell size is directly inspired by the Regent-X, which is the brand's entry-level helmet within the North American market as it stands. There are some distinct changes though. If you guys notice, right along this ridge line, it's flatter than many other Arai's, and that is by design. Arai has actually engineered the shell to accept communication devices. So sometimes on helmets that have more aerodynamic features and they're just, there's some more ridges and stuff, getting a communication device nice and flat and getting it solid on the helmet can be a bit tricky, so that helps it out there. Certifications. In the United States, of course, we have DOT. We also have a SNELL certification, so this is dual certification helmet. If you're watching this video from Europe or some other market, it's going to have the certifications relevant to that market. Arai uses 5 individual shell sizes. Extra small and small get individual shells. Medium and large share a shell. Extra large gets an individual shell, and then 2XL and 3XL they share a shell as well. When you see more premium brands, say Shoei, Arai, Alpine Stars, going down that list, and they're tightening up that fit and making it much closer to the actual dimensions that they want, you're just getting a better fit and also better weight. This helmet right here comes in at just shy of about 3 pounds, 5 ounces. Not the lightest in the world, not the heaviest in the world by any stretch of the imagination. If you guys look right here, we have this handy dandy spoiler. Notice I said handy because I want you guys to be aware you are not supposed to carry the helmet by the spoiler. As mentioned before, all of these features are shear away features. So this is stuck on basically with what's the equivalent of some pretty sturdy double-sided tape. If you carry it around by this, it will come off. That's by design. If you guys have issues with that, you actually can contact Arai North America and get that stuff reseated. But this is what makes the Contour-X is this happy little spoiler. And that's inspired by the Corsair-X's accessory DFX2 spoiler that you'll see on the race helmets popularized by guys in World Superbike and Moto America and MotoGP. It just makes it a little bit more sturdy and stable while heading down the road. Overall, are you getting a lot of lift while wearing this helmet? Not so much, but that will be heavily dependent on the bike you're on. Right now, I've been riding the Kawasaki Ninja 1100. This thing works great with that. On naked bikes at high speeds, you can get some of that lift coming up from, under the chin, that sort of sensation. Let's get to the interior of the helmet because this really makes the helmet for me. Big thing for the Contour-X and what separates it from several other helmets in the lineup is that it has a wider opening, much like the Regent X. It is 5mm wider overall. Cool, that just helps you put the helmet on and take it off. Because if you put on something that's a little bit more race fit, there can be some fear when you're first pulling on that more racier helmet and you're like, I don't know if this is the right size, but really you just sort of have to breach through it. Think Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, the Rhino seat. The interior specifically is derived from the Regent X, which honestly is one of the most comfortable helmets on the market today. It has this almost crushed velour interior. It does feature, along with many other Arai helmets, the facial contour system too. So you can customize the fit, get it more dialed in for you specifically, and just really, really make that helmet work for you. And that's actually gonna fix some of the problems that someone might say about aerodynamics, where if you're getting shaking or lifting or things like that, getting that perfect fit, it's going to alleviate some of that stuff. Talking about some of the other internal features, you do have the more premium features like emergency pad removal. So if you're ever in a bad spot and someone needs to get the pads out, emergency service personnel can just yank those out without doing further damage to you. Also, really important here, there are pre-cut channels for communication speakers, as well as wire routing within the padding back in here. So really it's primed for communication devices and just all of those monitored amenities. It has this very, very plush interior. Honestly, it just feels very, very good on the face. There are 13 vents if you add up all of the intake and exhaust vents overall. So we have these two F1 inspired little guys right here. Very easy to use with the gloves. We also have this main chin vent right here. Again, very easy to use with the glove. You also have some rear vents. And then you have this brand new sort of raised logo vent, which is definitely new for the brand in the North American market. There are some models in some other markets that have similar features, but for us, this is what we get. We're also seeing the VAZ shield system come back. Pretty much if you have any of the road helmets, you're gonna be able to swap and share shields, which is pretty handy dandy, especially if you're already in the Arai pipeline. One criticism of the Arai's in general is its locking mechanism. It takes a little bit of getting used to. There's definitely a learning curve here. What I recommend is the lift and scoop method. Basically, the shield mechanism locks in. This first movement disengages it, and then the second movement of scooping and lifting it up will allow you to manipulate the shield. And then the last ventilation piece that I want to mention is the little eyebrow vents that are actually in the face shield. Those are highly effective, and for someone that wears glasses, very, very important. In fact, They defog my glasses faster than pretty much anything that I can think of from any other brand. It's actually a very cool thing. Another thing to note here on this helmet as you see it, the helmet does come with a pin lock. That's cool, saves you some money, but it comes with a clear shield out of the box. This darker shield that you see here is an accessory, so you will have to pick that up on your own. As with many other Arais, you're going to have really good peripheral vision. So that's up, down, left, and right. So you're getting sort of race-oriented viewports out of something that isn't necessarily race-oriented. Although, if you were to go to a track day, you know, just a cheeky track day, I wouldn't shy away from wearing this thing on the track. If I'm going to be touring, if I'm going to be stuck on a motorcycle for a long period of time, this is a helmet that I would definitely be considering. Rain, shine, cold weather, and much more. And on the rain note, I have worn this thing in some pretty torrential downpours. Doesn't leak, anything like, there's no issues with that there. If you guys have any questions about the Contour-X or anything else motorcycle related, go ahead and drop them down below and we'll get you some answers. Now, take care.